Hello and welcome to one and all. In previous class, I concluded the definitions topic of economics. Okay. So based on all those definitions, we are able to frame what are all the fundamental problems facing in economy. Each and every nation, they are having certain problems which are called as the economic problems. Okay. Either it is wealth or welfare or scarcity, growth or whatever it is, everything happens to be a problem. Okay. So what are all the basic problems each and every economy faces, and on what basis economics is going to provide as a subject the knowledge of economics, how it is going to provide the solutions to all those problems. So beginning, we will just see what are all the basic or the fundamental problems faced by an economy. So that is the next topic in your first unit. Okay, as usual, I'm going to the whiteboard. So the next topic, the fundamental problems of an economy. Okay. So the fundamental problems of the economy. First problem is what to produce and in what quantities. Okay. The second problem is how to produce. The third problem is for whom to produce. Fourth problem is there optimum utilization of resources in the country? Optimum utilization of resources is happening in the country. And finally, the next problem is the economy growing or remaining static? Okay, so these are all the fundamental problems faced by each and common problems faced by each and every economy. So now first let us see one by one what are all these problems mean, starting with what to produce and in what quantities. Okay, so the sorry, first things, what to produce, meaning what type of commodities to be produced in the country. So when you talk about why we have to decide about, we have to worry about what type of commodities to be produced in the country. There are different varieties of commodities. You can broadly categorize as the consumer goods or capital goods. You have next section, you are having the meaning of all these goods. Okay, at that time I will explain clearly what is the meaning of consumer goods and what is the meaning of capital goods. For the time being, just understand consumer. If I say car, it is a consumer good. Okay, whatever the machinery that is used in the production of car, they come under the category of capital goods. Okay, just for the time being, understand this is the distinction between consumer goods and the capital goods. Okay, even in the consumer goods also, you can differentiate between necessary commodities, necessary goods, comforts, and luxurious goods. So this is what to produce. So you have to choose consumer goods or you have to choose capital goods? And if you are choosing consumer goods, are you going to choose necessary goods, or are you going to choose comforts, or are you going to, everything is or here. I'm highlighting the fact it is or, it is not and, because the reason we all know scarcity of resources and alternative uses. That means what? If the country decides to produce consumer goods, then it has to sacrifice the production of capital goods. It cannot produce both simultaneously, isn't it? We have already seen that resource can be used only for the production of only one type of commodity. So the country has to make a choice. Problem of choice is the basic problem, isn't it? So if the country decides to produce consumer goods, allocate the resources for the production of consumer goods, then automatically it cannot produce the capital goods. It has to sacrifice the capital goods. Again, even in the consumer goods also, either it is going to produce the necessary goods, or if it decides to produce the necessary goods, then the resources are not available for luxurious goods and vice versa, or for comforts. So the first choice a country has to make is which type of commodity it is going to for the production of which type of commodity the country is going to allocate its resources. So that is the first problem the country has to face and decide correctly accordingly. Okay. Then the next one, the next problem is, I mentioned to you what to produce and in what quantities. The quantity has to be the volume of production should be decided properly, because why I'm saying the what quantities, the volume of production is that it depends upon demand and supply. Okay. So demand, whatever the consumer demands, we go to the shop and purchase we demand a commodity. When we are willing to pay the price for a particular commodity, then we are demanding the commodity. If that particular commodity is available in the shop, then it is called as the supply of the commodity. So if the demand exceeds supply, the demand for any particular commodity exceeds supply, if the demand for necessary goods exceeds supply, for example, the country has decided to produce necessary goods. If the demand for necessary goods exceeds the supply of necessary goods, then automatically what will happen? The price of the necessary goods will increase. So if the price of the necessary goods increases, all the consumers in the country suffer, because this is most of the consumers, isn't it? So the majority of the people in any country, they prefer necessary commodities. So if the price of the necessary commodities increase because of the rise in the demand for a commodity, then the price increases and they will suffer. On the other hand, if the demand for the necessary goods or any commodity for the matter, if the demand is lesser than supply of the commodities, you are demanding the commodity, you are going to the shop and wants to purchase a commodity, but then the supply of the commodity, the commodity is not available in the shop. Like that, so many consumers are going to the market and demanding a particular commodity, but the supply is not there in the market. So what will happen? If the supply is lesser than the demand for a commodity, automatically the price of the commodity will decrease. Okay. So the supply of the commodities are there in the market, but then if the consumers are not demanding that particular commodity, automatically the price of the commodity will decrease. If the demand for the commodity is more, that is, you are going to the shop and demanding the commodity, but the supply is not there in the market, the price of the commodity will increase. Okay. So if the demand is lesser than supply, then the price of the commodity will decrease. If the price of the commodity decreases, then automatically the producers or the sellers, they suffer loss. Okay. So the commodity, what quantity then it has to be produced? The commodity has to be produced in such a way that demand matches the supply. So that is the correct quantity. Okay. Then neither the consumer are suffering with high price, nor the producers are suffering with the losses. So that is the way the country has to produce a particular commodity. So the first problem is the country has to decide about what type of commodity they have to produce. And the second problem is what should be the volume of production of that particular commodity. That is the second problem they have to face with. Okay. So that is the first basic problem faced by an economy. Okay. Then the second problem which I mentioned is how to produce. In what way the commodities have to be produced. So that is how to produce. Here also you have the country has two choices. One is the labor intensive technique and another one is the capital intensive technique. So when I say labor intensive technique is more of labor will be used than it's manual. More of labor will be used than machinery. So that is called as labor intensive technique. Alternatively, capital intensive technique means more of machinery will be used in place of labor. So both the country has to decide which type of technology they have to choose in order to produce the different varieties of commodities. Okay, so again, both labor intensive as well as the capital intensive technique, both have advantages as well as the disadvantages. So if the country designs about the labor intensive technique, what are all the advantages the country is having? The most important advantage they have is the problem of unemployment can be minimized. Okay, so unemployment in the country can be minimized if the country chooses the labor intensive technique. Okay, and what is the main disadvantage the country will face if it is choosing the labor intensive technique? Then it takes a lot of time, and some of the most of the commodities, it might not be as perfect as it is produced by the machinery. Okay, maybe there are certain commodities like handicrafts and all, labor intensive techniques is preferable, but majority of the commodities which have to be made by machinery, if it is manufactured by labor manually, then the commodity, the finishing might not be as perfect as it is produced by the machinery. So both have got the advantages and disadvantages. So the country has to decide only one thing the country can choose. So basically, how the country chooses, in any country, if the labor supply is abundant, the country has to choose the labor intensive technique. But if the country is having shortage of labor but abundant supply of machinery, then those countries will choose the capital intensive. Now, what are all the advantages of capital intensive? The production will happen very fast, the speed of the production, and the perfection, as I mentioned to you, the finishing will be good. But what is the problem with the capital intensive technique? It requires a huge amount of investment. So the cost of production will be very high if the country chooses the capital intensive technique, and not to mention about the unemployment problem. Okay, so but it can be compensated by the other benefits of capital intensive production. So the depending upon the nature of the country, if the country having the abundant supply of labor, then that type of country can choose the labor intensive technique. It has to it has to sacrifice all the advantages of capital intensive technique. So if the country is having the shortage of labor but abundant supply of capital, then that type of country can choose the capital intensive technique. Okay, so that is the second problem the country has to decide upon, either to choose labor manually or through machinery. Okay, then the third problem is for whom to produce. So whom to produce, in any there are different classes of people. Broadly, you can categorize them as the richer section or the poorer section. Okay, then indirectly it means whether the country is choosing to produce the commodities that cater to the needs of the richer sections of the society, that is the luxurious goods, or whether the country is going to decide about the production of those commodities that are mostly demanded by the masses of the country, that is the poorer sections of the country. So morally, if you see, the country should allocate the resources in such a way it is catering to the needs of the poorer sections of the society and not the richer sections of the society. So ethically, the country should allocate in such a way that it is catering to the needs of the majority of the poorer sections of the society. Okay, but then this also is decided by the type of economic system. Every country has its own economic system. So broadly, you have the economic system capitalism. That is, capitalism is mostly all the means of production, everything is operated by the private sector. Then the next type of economic system what you have is the socialism, which everything is by the public or government. And you have countries like India, where you have the mixed economic system. We have both the public as well as the private sector. So that is a mixed economic system. So if it is in capitalism, automatically the private sector, they will cater only to the needs of the richer section. But in the socialism, automatically they will cater only to the needs of the government will always prefer to allocate the resources for the production of those goods catering to the needs of the poorer section. But in a country like India, we are having both the private as well as public, any mixed economic system. So both are distributed accordingly. So this is how the country designs for whom to produce. So this is the way the resources are allotted. Okay, that is the third thing the country has to decide upon. Okay, now moving on to the fourth point, optimum utilization of resource. These are all some of the economic terms when I say optimum utilization of resources. So when I say optimum, it is nothing but proper or the correct utilization of resources, using the resources properly, using the resources without any wastage. That is the meaning of optimum utilization of resources. Now what do I mean by resources? Everything is a resource. Land, raw materials. Land provides the raw materials, and then you have the population of the country that supply the labor force, and then you have the capital, that is in the form of money. The capital can be invested, this money can be invested in the form of machinery and other tools for production. And then you have the producer, who is called as the organizer or organization or whatever. So broadly you can categorize the resources of the country into this. So all these resources have to be utilized properly without any wastage. Okay, so that is what we mean by optimum utilization of resources. The resources should not be wasted. It should neither be underutilized, nor it cannot be overutilized. Then there will not, the production will start decreasing. Underutilized, the production will not reach to the maximum. So it should neither, these resources should neither be underutilized nor it should be overutilized. So if you are having the mid part, that is what is known as the optimum allocation of resources. So if you are using the resources properly, then we can say that the country is efficiently using the resources. That is one of the main goals of each and every country, efficiently using the resources. Okay, so if the country is efficiently using the resources to the maximum extent, then you can say that there is full employment of resources in a country. Everything, labor, machinery, land, raw materials, everything is properly utilized to the maximum extent. So then there will be full employment of resources, which is a very, very difficult thing to achieve. Okay, so but this should be the ultimate goal of each and every country. Okay, so now that is the fourth problem faced by each and every nation. So finally, the last one, whether the country or an economy is growing or remaining static over a period of time. So just now I told you full employment of resources. So if once the country reaches the full employment, all the resources have been utilized to the maximum extent, then what is the progress? The country will come to a standstill, isn't it? So once you reach the maximum level, that is also dangerous. Always there should be production happening in the country. Always there should be growth happening in the country. Okay, so the country should not reach the stagnant position, neither before the full employment level, then that is underutilization of resources, the country is not progressing. But even after full employment level, if the country stops growing, then the country will be saturated. There will not be any growth in the country. So that is also not correct. Okay, so there should always be the possibility of growth in each and every country. So that's what all the innovations, discoveries should keep on happening. Innovations, discoveries, discovery of new resources, discovery of new varieties of commodities, discovery of new technique of production. So that should keep on happening in a particular country. Then only the country will continuously keep on growing. Okay, so the country should not reach the static position, it should keep on growing. So that is the final problem faced by each and every country. Okay, so these are all the fundamental problems of an economy, which the knowledge of economics, which you will see in the next topics, you will see that the knowledge of economics is trying to solve. Okay, so uh, with this I'll close this video. Again, if you like this video, if you have any doubts, please mention in the comment box. Please like, subscribe and share with your friends. So until the next video, the next one is what is the nature and scope of economics, so which I will come with the next video. Until my next video, take care, bye bye.